Good evening, it's 8 p.m. local time here in Warsaw. I'm Klaudia Czerwińska and you're watching World News Tonight. The long wait is over. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has finally revealed his victory plan in a speech to the Ukrainian Parliament. With the upcoming NATO meeting of defense ministers set to take place this week and U.S. President Joe Biden meeting Germany's Olaf Scholz in Berlin, a lot can soon be decided in terms of further support for Ukrainian war effort. I'll discuss that with our guests later in the program, but before that happens, let's take a look at tonight's headlines. The first migrants have arrived at Albania's asylum camp. Poland's president and prime minister clash in parliament. A Russian man has been rescued after surviving 67 days at sea on a raft. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has revealed the details of his long-awaited victory plan in a speech to Ukrainian lawmakers. The plan consists of 5 points and 3 classified appendices. Apart from these secret points, the plan more or less reiterates Kyiv's recent calls for more weapons from the West.
Volodymyr Alexandrovich Zelensky.
Speaking at the Ukrainian Parliament on Wednesday, the Ukrainian leader seemed more like a military general than a politician. President Zelensky wasted no time in presenting parts of his victory plan.
The first point is the invitation to NATO, now. The second point is defense. It is realistic to defend our positions on the battlefield in Ukraine, and at the same time it is our duty to return the war to the territory of Russia.
Each point got the applause of the Ukrainian MPs, but the approval of Kyiv's Western allies might not come just as easily. The latest victory plan can be broken down into 5 major points. An immediate invitation to NATO comes first. But that's something the alliance is simply not ready to give, as long as there are Russian troops on Ukrainian soil. More military aid is by all means realistic, but the green light on striking targets in Russia is unlikely to come before the US presidential elections in November, if ever. A deterrence package and economic support are also a continuation of the West's current policy towards Ukraine. Anti-air equipment and financial aid packages are still being delivered by both Europe and the United States. The last point on Ukrainian troops stationed in European military bases concerns post-war plans, so it doesn't really apply to plans on how to win the war. These 5 points hardly represent a concrete solution to ending the war. This sentiment is even shared by some members of the Ukrainian Parliament.
It's not a plan. Plan is something concrete which can be done, and it should definitely include something which should be done inside Ukraine, not just outside. So we can call it strategic priorities of Ukrainian foreign policy. Right, absolutely great. But it's not the plan of victory.
The long-anticipated victory plan doesn't differ much from the previous 10-step peace plan offered by Zelensky in the first year of the war, although the 3 secret points of the victory plan remain a mystery.
NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte deflected questions about Ukraine's victory plan unveiled on Wednesday. The matter is set to be discussed at the organization's ministerial meeting on Thursday and Friday.
The first point of President Zelensky's victory plan is an invitation for Ukraine to join the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. NATO's Secretary General was asked about Kyiv's intentions during Wednesday's press conference.
As you know, at the NATO summit, allies agreed that Ukraine's path to membership is irreversible. And Ukraine is closer to NATO than ever before. Ukraine will join the alliance, of course, when the time is right. And we will discuss, of course, also this item in the Zelensky victory plan.
NATO's defence ministers will gather in Brussels on Thursday and Friday to discuss the victory plan as well as other issues. The meeting will also include, for the first time, representatives from Japan, South Korea, Australia and New Zealand. The Ukrainian delegation will be headed by Defence Minister Rustem Umerov. The meeting will function as a substitute for the Ramstein summit, called off earlier this month due to President Biden cancelling his visit. Biden is instead set to visit Germany on Thursday, where he'll meet with Chancellor Olaf Scholz. The White House has announced that Biden will not meet with Zelensky during his trip to Europe.
It's official. President Biden plans to visit Germany at the end of this week. We look forward to welcoming you, Mr. President.
Slovakian Prime Minister Robert Fico hinted that despite Rutte's vague comments, the meeting might bring a breakthrough.
The probability of the war in Ukraine ending is high in the short term. I expect some hint tomorrow because suddenly the topic of an invitation for Ukraine to NATO is appearing.
One of the proposals for ending the war, which is reportedly being considered by Western diplomats, is the so-called West Germany solution. This would see Ukraine enter NATO, with security guarantees covering only the territories not occupied by Russia. Ukraine would have to give up attempts to liberate its Russian-controlled territories for the time being, hoping to recover them later through political means. This would be similar to West Germany's membership in NATO, which only extended to the 10 western states, while the east of the country remained under Soviet control until the German reunification.
EU and Gulf leaders held their first ever joint summit in Brussels today, marking a new phase in their strategic partnership. The key topics included boosting trade, energy cooperation, and tackling global security issues like the conflicts in the Middle East and Ukraine. The leaders pledged stronger economic ties and efforts to enhance peace and stability. Our correspondent Sasha Farbach is in Brussels with more. Good evening, Sasha. So are these two blocs now closer aligned than the way before? And how did the summit actually go so far?
Yeah, hi there. Good evening, Claudia. Indeed, I would say they are closer than before. I mean, these two blocs have been very much in a way, the closeness has been frozen. There was this attempt of a free trade deal that got frozen back in 2008. There really wasn't one common impetus here, and that has changed these last few years, ever since Russia's terrible invasion of Ukraine. And that was also center stage here, very much closer ties. And if we look at that joint statement that was released just about half hour ago or so, it does very much point to that. There are stronger words, stronger ties planned, especially in trying to revive that free trade agreement, that bloc between those 6 countries and the European Union. So this is always going to be a significant thing, and I think the sheer fact that all of these countries are here is an achievement. Now, on Charles Michel's opening comments here, also I think he made it clear that there are 2 main things changing the world, and that is looking at the revolution of AI and also looking at the green transition. Both of those things, where these 2 major blocks have a lot to gain from each other, including investment, and that was also listed there. Energy, of course, very, very key, as the European Union has imported more and more energy, 3 times as much since 2020. That's key. That's going to be developed further, looking also at hydrogen hubs and grids, cables to connect the region further, but also really quickly also on geopolitics, where initially there was a bit of reservation, there also was fairly clear language. And if we look at some of the terminology on Ukraine, well, apart from actually not condemning Russia directly, there was text here where they have said that they do call on the United Nations General Assembly resolutions and call on immediate withdrawal of Russian forces and also supporting the protection of civilians. And also with the Middle East, there was a lot of unity in terms of what the European Union is looking for in ceasefire and also what the Gulf countries want. So I'd say unity here a bit further. There was something still that is missing, but in terms of closer cooperation, that is definitely solidified here today. Claudia.
Thank you so much. That was Sasha Farbach coming to us from Brussels. Keep us updated. In the heat of migration turmoil in the EU, a group of 16 migrants arrived at the Albanian port of Shungjin on Wednesday, marking the first transport of illegal asylum seekers from Italy to Albania. The 2 countries have struck a deal in which migrants intercepted at sea would be kept at Italian-run reception centers in Albania, awaiting permits to enter the EU country. Piotr Miszczuk has the details.
10 Bangladeshis and 6 Egyptians have reached the shores of Albania after they were picked up at sea on their way from Libya to Italy. Upon arrival at the Albanian port, they were escorted to one of 2 Italian reception centers set up for some 670 million euros as part of the deal. Allaying wide criticism, Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, an originator of the solution, touted it as courageous and reflecting the European spirit.
Italy set a good example by signing the Italy-Albania protocol to process asylum applications on Albanian territory, but under Italian and European jurisdiction. The two facilities under the protocol, the Shingen and Jadar centers, are now ready and operational.
This week has abounded in anti-immigration plans, with Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk being taken to task for announcing his intention to suspend the right to asylum in Poland. But political experts say that the mushrooming solutions to the migration issue resonate with Europe-wide sentiment.
Europe is no longer open to receive as many migrants as it did in the past.
Yet the unprecedented Italian plan has been branded as abusive by Human Rights Watch. Other organizations have also been vocal about the details of the agreement between Italy and Albania.
There's a number of groups who should be exempted from this deal, so the elderly, unaccompanied children, and those who have survived torture and trafficking and so forth.
What we're seeing here is that they're being brought into these prisons and being held against European law and their human rights.
According to some experts, the wide criticism won't discourage other countries from striking similar deals.
And I expect more nations will do the same thing. So the sentiments in Europe and in the United States is quickly turning against migration.
The reason why Albania was selected for Italy's partner is not only due to the two countries' geographical proximity. Albania is also dependent upon Italy in a variety of ways, with nearly half of its exports going to Italy. There is also a historical context, as back in the 1990s, dozens of thousands of Albanians fled to Italy during a severe crisis, which Albania's Prime Minister now uses to justify the latest deal.
Poland's political divisions have once again been front and center at Parliament, with the President and Prime Minister trading blows over the current government's first year in office. Top of mind was the country's new migration policy and alleged abuses of power under the previous Law and Justice administration. Aaron Daman has more.
1 year on from Poland's general election, the country's main opposition party staging a dramatic walkout at Parliament. The day started with a message from Polish President Andrzej Duda.
I cannot fail to mention certain issues that are outrageous to anyone who cares about the legal order, democracy and the rule of law, and these are all things that are dear to my heart.
But Prime Minister Donald Tusk wasn't so sure about that.
I won't speculate on where he has the rule of law and the constitution, but it's definitely not in his heart.
Meanwhile, President Duda wasn't done yet.
The energy and resources of the state, instead of implementing ambitious plans, have been redirected to organizing witch hunts, satisfying some lowest instincts.
Under the Polish coat of arms, President Duda delivered an almost hour-long speech that drew a standing ovation from the law and justice camp, while others held their heads in their hands and heckled the head of state. Just metres away from Duda sat both Prime Minister Donald Tusk and Tusk's arch-nemesis, law and justice leader Jarosław Kaczyński, who is an ally to the president. After Duda finished, it was Tusk's turn, but Kaczyński and his fellow MPs soon decided it was time to go.
On October 15, 2023, the Polish people made it clear that they had had enough of the government of the party that also installed the president in the presidential palace.
Speaking to TVP World, Foreign Minister Radosław Sikorski did not hide his disdain for Duda's speech.
I didn't like it.
And while Sikorski agreed with Duda's message on the importance of security, he says it struck a clearly partisan tone.
It was not balanced, it was not entirely truthful, and it was not presidential in that sense.
On the other side of the political aisle, a different perspective.
The president has the right to do this, and I would even say it's his obligation to summarize and evaluate the current government.
One expert says Duda's address was playing to the domestic audience.
It was completely political. It had nothing to do with migration or asylum or, international law. It was really predominantly about saying that what the government does, he doesn't like.
As a presidential election nears, the fight for votes is heating up. Duda cannot run again, with the Law and Justice Party yet to reveal its candidate, and Civic Coalition set to make an announcement in December.
The trial of two Russian citizens, Alexei T. and Andrei G., began on Wednesday in Krakow. Both men are accused of participating in a terrorist group, collaborating with Russian intelligence, and involvement in recruitment for the Wagner Group.
The trial was postponed twice, as more time was needed to translate the 634-page-long indictment. On Wednesday, Alexei T. and Andrei G. faced charges of conducting propaganda activities aimed at destabilizing the political situation in Poland, as well as other European countries. According to the prosecutor's office, the defendants put up hundreds of recruitment stickers in Krakow and Warsaw, enabling contact with people responsible for further recruitment and organization of the Wagner Group's activities. During the hearing, one of the defendants admitted that both men collected the leaflets in Moscow. For their alleged crimes, Alexei T. and Andrei G. face up to 10 years in prison. The prosecutor's office has indicated that the detainees could have also conducted similar activities in other European cities. The Wagner Group is a Russian state-funded private military company. Wagner's mercenaries fought in the Russian-Ukrainian war until their mutiny in June 2023. Now, the Wagner Group is reported to operate mainly in African countries friendly with Moscow.
A Russian man was rescued after spending an astounding 67 days adrift on a tiny boat in the waters of the northern Pacific Ocean. According to Russian authorities, his vessel was discovered on Monday in the Sea of Okhotsk.
46-year-old Mikhail Pichugin initially set off with his brother and his teenage nephew on August the 9th.
After some time, the contact with them was lost. The vessel's whereabouts remained unknown, with search and rescue operations underway. On October 14th, around 10 p.m., the catamaran was spotted by a fishing boat passing in the Sea of Okhotsk.
Pichugin was the only survivor of the ill-fated trip. The bodies of the two other men were found on the boat, and Pichugin was taken to hospital. Local media outlet Kamchatka Live has reported that Pichugin lost about 50 kilograms over those 2 grueling months. Russia's Shot Telegram channel said the boat was found about 1,000 kilometers from its initial destination. Pichugin's survival is nothing short of a miracle. Apart from food and water deprivation, he also had to face difficult weather conditions. The images show a tiny boat with no cabin to hide in, and the temperatures at the Sea of Okhotsk might drop well below 0 degrees Celsius at this time of the year.
With the NATO defense ministerial meeting beginning tomorrow, Joe Biden's visit with German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, and the official announcement of Zelensky's victory plan, a lot could be at stake for Ukraine in the next few days. Joining me now to discuss this are my guests, Jakub Janda, the director of the European Values Center for Security Policy, and Ukrainian MP Oleksiy Goncharenko. Good evening, and thank you so much for joining us here tonight. Welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
Hello.
I would like to begin, Mr. Goncharenko, as we've seen in one of the reports here on TVP World before, you said regarding the victory plan presented by President Zelensky, it's not a plan. A plan is something concrete which can be done, and it should include something which can be done inside Ukraine. Foreign policy priorities, great, but not a victory plan. Do you think this victory plan, which you don't necessarily consider a plan, is feasible, or is it just wishful thinking? And what is the concrete solution?
Hello. Unfortunately, this so-called victory plan looks like more wishful thinking, unfortunately, because we really need a plan, and but we don't have it. So, again, everything which was said is really important and very much needed. Invitation to NATO, more weaponry and everything. It's right. But it's not a plan. It's not in the hands of Ukraine. It's in the hands of our allies. And if they will not do this, they will not do this. That's all. And we need to react in any way. It shouldn't depend from what our allies will do or will not do. So that's why I was waiting for some serious conversation with the country, with the Ukrainian people, because we need this conversation. The situation is very difficult. Unfortunately, it has not happened.
And what about those, I just wanted to top that up with the addition of those 3 appendices, the surprise appendices, they're called. So we've had 5 points so far, but there are 3 more to be revealed. Do you think that there could be something there that could potentially change the balance and change the landscape of the situation?
Again, I don't know what is these annexes, but it is probably the weaponry. But to give this weaponry or not is in the hands of our allies. And I don't see why they will now give us what they have not given us before, unfortunately. Again, I mean, if we're speaking about this as a kind of what Ukraine should try to receive from our allies, what Ukraine should work on, absolutely agree. But it's not a plan, it's not about victory, it's something different.
Mr. Yanda, I saw you nodding just a second ago. Same question for you based on the quote by Mr. Goncharenko. What do you think is the concrete solution? What should be done now?
Well, what should be done is quite simple, but it's very hard politically, and that is that mainly European countries should, let's say, double or triple the financial and military assistance to Ukraine, because Ukraine is bravely defending itself, but Europe as well, from Russia, which is backed by China and North Korea. But so this is pretty much the only, I would say, practical solution which there is. But our main problem is that most EU countries, including my own Czech Republic, are not doing enough. And we are doing quite a lot, but still not enough. And that's what we can see very practically on the battlefield. And Ukraine can feel that actually the Western support in terms of material and in terms of financial support is actually not increasing as it should be.
I would like to take us away slightly from the 5 points from the victory plan. However, this is going to be related as well. There's loads of movement when it comes to Ukraine. We know that the Ramstein meeting was being cancelled. It's due to be postponed. But there is also a meeting of defense ministers taking place tomorrow in Brussels. And one of the points on the list by Mr. Zelensky is immediate invitation of Ukraine to NATO. Does Ukraine fulfill the requirements to be a part of NATO? And if not, which we know that there is a military conflict going on, are there going to be, by your standards, by your opinion, extenuating circumstances for Ukraine to possibly join NATO anytime soon? Mr. Goncharenko?
You said about does Ukraine fulfill requirements? It's not about requirements. Membership in NATO is a political decision. I think Ukraine definitely deserves to become a member of NATO, and also I think that not just Ukraine, but NATO will benefit from having Ukraine inside. And I think it was a huge mistake in 2008 when Ukraine was not invited to become a member of NATO, but all these discussions about this just pushed Putin to the understanding that he should attack now, not to wait before Ukraine will be a member. So definitely that's the right point, and definitely Ukraine should become a member of NATO. But let us be frank, that will be dependent from who will be elected the President of the United States in 3 weeks, and what will be the politics of him or her. That's the question. We can discuss a lot of, we know that we have support of Poland, I'm sure we have support of Czech Republic, I'm sure that we have support of many other Eastern European countries, but without United States of America, all of this is wishful thinking.
Mr. Yanda, do you think that if Ukraine were to be joining NATO anytime soon, this could lead to further escalation when it comes to the war in Ukraine, or do you think that this would actually stop Russia?
I think it would stop Russia because Russia does not have many other ways how to escalate outside of nuclear weapons. And Russia would not dare to use nuclear weapons against a NATO member state because that would be pretty much end of Russia as a state. So I think definitely Ukraine should be in NATO as soon as possible. And as we said, it's a political decision. There are no military requirements which Ukraine is not fulfilling. Ukraine has one of the best militaries on the European continent, thanks to its own bravery and also Western material support. So it is possible. But there are nations, mainly Western and Southern European countries, who are saying no to Ukraine NATO membership because they do not want to actually prolong the current Russian war against Ukraine. And they are literally afraid that this would lead into further escalation, which I don't think is true, because I don't see how could Russia even do more damage or be more hostile or more evil to Ukraine than it is already today, outside of nuclear weapons?
Mr. Goncharenko, you mentioned the role of the United States in the upcoming U.S. presidential election, and we know that President Biden couldn't make it to the Ramstein meeting. The meeting was later said to be postponed to a later date. We do not know if it's going to take place. There are different meetings. We know that Biden is set to arrive in Berlin and Germany on Friday to meet with Mr. Olaf Scholz. But according to the statement released by the White House, we know that there's no meeting with Mr. Zelensky in the cards. Why would you say Biden is meeting Scholz, and to what extent is this recognition? To what extent is this the recognition of what happens to Ukraine without Germany's greater involvement?
With all respect to President Biden, but he's finished as the president, and it doesn't matter what he will meet with and what he will speak with. I mean, it's good. I have all respect to President Biden. I'm thankful for support, but he is leaving. That's all. He will not make any decisions anymore.
He might not be making decisions, but he's an extension of one of the representatives, one of the people who are running for the president, for the office of the U.S. president. So this is definitely this would be a continuation, so to speak.
We don't know. That's the answer. I mean, what will do Kamala Harris if she will be elected? We just don't know. How heavily she will be influenced by Joseph Biden? We don't know. So again, we are thankful to President Biden. But if you're asking me about this, President Biden, his administration, they helped Ukraine enough to survive, but not enough to win. And I want this policy to be changed. If we will continue like this, yeah, it will take some time, but the end will be disastrous. Ukraine will fall, because we can't just pay for all these prolonging hesitations and everything with our people, because we're running out of people. That's what's happening. So that's why we need some more concrete and decisive policy now. Again, what was done 2.5 years ago was great, and we are very thankful to President Biden for this. But then it wasn't so great, and now we need another kind of policy. And I don't know who will be the president of the United States, but I hope very much that they will be decisive in what they will do.
Mr. Yanda, and the final question for you. With all the crucial meetings taking place, with Mr. Biden not planning to meet President Zelensky, do you think that things are starting to be beyond Mr. Zelensky's control? Is he still successful, or he's not really successful when it comes to those upcoming meetings, and things are starting to be taken out of his control? What's your opinion?
I think he is very successful. I think he really is a war hero of our generation, not only for what he did at the beginning of the war, but also now, when he's able of basically grabbing or pushing many other countries to actually support Ukraine much more than they are already doing. So I think he's the best international advocate Ukraine has. But really the problem is not in him. The problem is in mainly European and American countries, which are unwilling, or the leaderships are unwilling to actually give Ukraine enough support to win, or I would say to survive and win, which is exactly what needs to happen from now on.
Mr. Goncharenko, just to finish this off, Zelensky, is he still relevant, considering that you've been quite vocal about his victory plan so far?
Oh, he is relevant. He is Ukrainian president. He is our commander-in-chief, but it doesn't mean that I should applaud to everything he is doing. That's democracy. And when I see it's not the best way, I should tell this, and not just me, but Ukrainian society. And he should change the course.
Thank you very much. Jakub Janda and Oleksiy Goncharenko joining me. Thank you for joining us here on TVP World. And so this was all the latest news for now. Please stay tuned here on TVP World for more news and features, as we will be back with you shortly.